This episode, we are full on spoilers for both the books and the show. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, I'm Mitch.
I'm Max.
I'm Jim.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to What the Adaptation. It's 2025, everybody. Our first episode of the year.
Whoop, whoop.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Yay. Happy New Year.
This year, we are continuing our discussion of The Expanse. This time with Season 4, Episode 1. And for The Expanse, like we did last year, we brought Mitch along as our observer, he's calling himself tonight. But Mitch will be with us for the season. We had a great time with him last year. How you doing this year, Mitch?
I'm doing fine. 2025 is off to a good start.
That's good to hear. And as you can see, our good friend Jim is back. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling displaced, though, since I'm usually the closer. But I can't be here to close this season. I'll be on a frickin' cruise ship. Okay, I'm not really upset about that. But I'm glad to come and be the opener instead.
The opener, yep. And Max, Happy New Year. How you doing today?
Here.
So what can you tell us about this episode?
Oh, stuff happened.
Stuff
happened. Yeah.
Stuff happened. Yeah. They did some stuff. Like they were on Earth. And then they weren't on Earth. It's a wild ride.
Hey there, Noam. So this episode was written, it's called New Terra, written by Breck Eisner. Or not written by Breck Eisner, directed by Breck Eisner, written by the team of Mark Ferguson and Hawk Ostby. Again, they did a lot together. And it was originally released on December 12th, 2019. So not that long ago, really. But it seems like a really long time ago.
5 years.
So what does everybody think of this particular episode?
If you're going to start a season off not following the books, they did a grand job.
That pretty much sums it up.
Huh. You know, that's interesting. An interesting take, because I think they follow the book really well, except they're following the books. There's a pluralness to it that I absolutely love. So I thought it was a great start to another season.
Mm-hmm.
It's a case of, it's another example of like last season and previous seasons of this show where, they stay mostly accurate to the book in many, many ways, but in a lot of ways, they do a 180 from the book and still manage to tell the same story, where they make major changes, but they're still somehow telling the same story. And
actually,
it's the kind of thing I wish certain other TV showrunners would learn how to do. But
well, and actually, they're telling more of a story than you get from the books. So, in that regards, they're adding a lot, and I think they did it in a really good way. I actually love this entire season. I've always liked season 4. I know, Glenn, you're not that keen on it, but
it's not that. It's just there has to be a least favorite, and this happens to have that dishonor of being the least favorite. I still really like the season. It's just not as much as the other 5.
It's one of the things I always say is like the one thing they did with this series is they just added more and more drama in this show. And this episode like literally shows that. They stacked on the drama. That's what this episode did.
Hands down, of the 9 books of the core series, Cibola Burn is my least favorite. By far. The season based on it, I don't feel nearly as negatively. So they did some good things with the adaptation choices, pulling in hints of Nemesis games into this season, as well as the novella
Gods of Risk.
Yeah, Gods of Risk. So we get all that Bobby content. Yeah, which we already see in this episode.
Yeah, this is the start.
I kind of feel like what they did to Murdy at the beginning of the episode was kind of what they wanted to do to him in the books. So
Well, Murdy. I'm sure we'll get into a lot of this.
Yeah.
The Murdy character in the books is sort of benign at the beginning. It's not until stuff hits the fan that things that his character, as we get to know it in the show, really comes out.
Now you've both said Murdy. I just want to be sure. I thought it was Murtry. Am
Well,
I saying?
It's Mercury, I think.
Is it Murtry?
Murtry.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Mercury.
It's like, are my notes wrong? What's going on?
Oh no,
No,
I didn't read the last R when I was looking it up here.
Yeah. Amos calls him Murdy at the very beginning.
Well, that makes sense.
That's why I do it.
Funny story though, I was looking his character up on the wiki just to check some stuff, like comparing the book to the show, and like I didn't realize what his first name was. I'm like, that's okay. That's pretty on the nose.
Yes. Giving him the name Adolphus as a first name is,
Okay.
It's like, here, this guy's bad.
I don't pick up the relationship. Who is Adolphus that you're picking up on?
Adolphus is the Latin version of the name Adolf.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I got you. Thank you.
Like even without that, it's like pretty on the nose of like, oh, yeah.
You just kind of, and this actor, again, I got to pull up his
Vern
name.
Gorman.
Hasn't he played those kind of characters before?
You always hate him whenever you see him. This is the role he plays in everything I see him.
Torchwood, he's not hateable. He's rather likable.
I haven't watched Torchwood, so okay.
Okay. That was the first thing I saw Vern on, was Torchwood.
Well, and it's funny, Willem Dafoe gets the same type of parts.
He does.
Yes.
He does.
They have that.
I like him in the Spider-Man stuff.
Bird was fun in Torchwood.
But this kind of a nice segue to our first question of the night is what changes from the source material, in this episode, and did they affect your enjoyment in the episode?
You want to take that, Mitch?
Other than what I've said many times, everything. Let's the first 7/8 of this show is not encompassed in the book Cibola Burns. Period. I mean, you don't get anything from the book itself until the very end, when you get to the Edward Israel, and even then you don't get Edward Israel. You just simply get the dropship.
Because they cut the Edward Israel line from the story. Yeah.
It's a big change. I think they had to establish a lot of stuff.
7/8 is a big change.
Yeah, but it's like Jim pointed out, we're not covering and not pulling just from Cibola Byrne.
Yeah.
The storyline that we're getting with Bobby and to some extent Avasarala is mostly present in the books. It's just, it's not front and center. It's not necessarily in Cibola Byrne. It's in one of the novellas, or in, what's the next one? Nemesis Games?
Nemesis Games, yeah.
Nemesis Games. Like that whole scene with Nancy Gao and Avasarala, where Nancy's like, why aren't we doing it this way? Why? It was all just a prelude to the whole election campaign that's going to be happening, which isn't directly shown in the books, but we see the results of it, and we know it's going on in the book through people seeing news stuff. So, and like we mentioned, there's the whole Gods of Risk stuff that's being pulled in for Bobby's story. So it's not like they're adding that much. I mean, they're just pulling from multiple sources,
True.
and making a few tweaks.
Yeah, I did love getting to have, big and bold Avasarala right away in this episode. Yeah, she shines. And that was great to see.
Oh yeah.
It's like I always said, they always add drama to the show, and that's what they do to keep it going. And even if they pull from other storylines, it's also in a lot of ways make work for these characters to keep them going when they do have storylines from the books for other seasons.
Right. Yeah, because they want to keep the actors active in the show.
Yeah. Because like at the end of Cibola Burns, we do see Bobby being mentioned by Avasarala.
The prologue is Bobby and Avasarala.
Yeah.
Well, the prologue is Bobby, I think.
It is just Bobby. Yeah.
Well, we see Avasarala mentioning missing Bobby at the end. Like she's actively thinking about her.
Yeah, because she thinks about, should I hug her, just sit down, kiss her on the cheek? What, how should I greet her?
So there's the back and forth of like those two characters existing, but they're not actually being shown in Cibola Burns like at the beginning necessarily, like we saw.
So
episode 1.
A major change that I loved for the show, but also grieve what it caused, is the fact that the Rocinante goes down to the planet. So we don't get any of that drama up in space with the Edward Israel and the Rocinante. That's gone. We're not going to have, and future things that happen with that. We don't get any of that. And now we get Naomi actually trying to do this whole acclimate to a planet thing, which, that wasn't in the books. No. But still, I liked what it brought to the show. So I grieve what I don't get, but I like what I got.
It definitely made for a great thumbnail, I think, for tonight's episode.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, the story, they did change some story arcs, obviously. There she is, that poor girl.
Yeah.
Naomi's story arc is completely changed because she does go down to the planet.
Right.
Then you've got, I had another one in my mind a moment ago and it's gone. But, there's, you just have that's such a major change. I think it works for the best. Keeping her involved, you get that. I mean, she ends up where she ends up, which is fine. But giving her that path to get there, that is dramatic, it's consequential. I think it just worked out so well. Oh, I remember the other one. Yeah. And that's our baddie in the in the Belters.
Oh, in the Belters.
Yeah. Well, they changed the Lucia and Basia.
Not Basia.
Right.
Basia.
But we haven't really got that in the first episode yet. That isn't coming through yet. That's going to come through as the season comes along. Yeah.
True.
I agree.
My bad.
I just got to disagree with my friend Noman Garden here. I prefer seeing the Rossi land on its ass. I know it's not canon, but it actually makes a hell of a lot more sense than and then everything's on its side. Then it just messes everybody up going in and out of your ship when it's on land. It's like this, hey, everything's oriented the same way you walk around it on the rest of the time. So yeah, I think they fixed the mistake they made in writing when they said go ahead and have it land on its butt. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, but lining up so perfectly with that plateau.
Yeah, that was
that was a little convenience sake.
I was like, wow, how'd they find that?
That was convenience sake.
I was also not entirely sure of the physics that the ship comes down and then just moves over this direction. Okay, how does that work? A ship that's up and down just moving like this?
Oh, didn't you see Starship land a month or 2 ago? It came down and it like just kind of moved a little sideways.
It was more of a.
Yeah. Hey, good evening, Ash and Crow. Hope you're doing well tonight, my friend.
Hello.
Hello, Alex. Nice to meet you. All right, so where were we on questions? Were we still answering the first one, Max?
Yeah.
If anyone had any other ones, I mean, it's nice to see Drummer back and them. And
yeah. Well, I did note this. In the Cibola Burn, Bobby actually works for the VA.
Yes.
Yeah, rather than being a worker and being on the outside and then things happen after that.
Yeah. They need to to get her in a more industrial role, I think, to have everything work well with the Gods of Risk storyline and her busting, because it's not just the Gods of Risk storyline. It's also pulling straight from storyline that leads into the last 3 books in the series. That stuff that directly ties to Laconia. We're seeing the beginning of that conspiracy in this season.
Yeah.
Spoiler for the season, but we see that beginning in this season.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was necessary. That's a change that I'm like completely fine with. Because her job at the VA equivalent didn't really have any story relevance. I mean, the closest it did is the opening scene with her and the guy bumming money, and he says he was a Marine or a veteran, and she's like, "Oh yeah, wear Ganymede," and all that. It doesn't really play a part in the story, so I think it doesn't hurt this story at all, changing her to demolitions tech or whatever they're calling it.
Yeah.
There was one other change in the content in this first episode that we haven't mentioned yet. And it's subtle. It's right near the end. But it's when you see that propaganda ad during the Ashford drummers scene, which is a hint, a tad of Marco in the background. Already starting to stir up the discontent and shout out against the official forces of the Belter, Well, it's right there, and that's all for future books, but they're already sticking it right in here in this first episode.
Yeah, and also that Belter that they rescued after their Belter ship, the core
rescued. He's all bleeding out of his face and almost dead, and they're not giving him any medical treatment.
And he is basically, ragging on Ashford about what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that, I think, ties in with that broadcast you just brought up to set the stage for what we see in the future.
Well, and you can see in that scene, it impacted Ashford then. He's not reacting real positively in that conversation with Drummer then. They're planting seeds for what we know is coming.
Well, Ashford
in this episode has done a really good job at. Go ahead, Matt. I'll let you go.
I thought Ashford, being reticent about sending the codes to be able to go through the rings fits right in with that whole thing of, he's not happy with what he's doing, but he's doing it because he has to. And I think he's doing it because he's making up for what happened previous season.
That traffic control lady was a little bit pushy about it too, though. When they did the Rocinante, the Rossi went through. Alex had time to put it through. The issue wasn't just like give it to us. No, it's like she gave the Earth ship or Mars ship, whatever you want to consider it, the ability. Oh, kitty appearance.
Rossi, Alex didn't stall either. They just ignored the first 2 requests from Ashford. They just ignored them.
And
this episode has been doing a really good job of setting up seeds, as you put it. In addition to the ones you've mentioned, it reminds us about the existence of the railgun and how that works. It even showed us that there was a reverse thrust going when you fire the railgun to keep you in stable position. And they also reminded us about Holden's cancer and the oncocytes. I mean, flat out showing us injecting himself.
Yep.
That's an injection that doesn't look painful, but the ones that my girl was getting for the gravity drugs, that just, dang, that sounds so painful.
And what about the bruises that were being left behind on her both arms and her leg?
Yep.
Yeah, attention to detail on that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the old not vaccine, that's the wrong word, but what you'd get if you were bit for rabies, someone rabid, and they used to have to do it right in the belly, and they do it around the clock, and eventually you're getting shots on top of bruises, and it was brutal and painful, and thankfully they don't have to do that anymore. But that's what I was reminded of, seeing that, where just gotta do another one now. Not good, but necessary.
Yep. Well, I just got 3 shots last week, and after 2 days, you don't even feel them anymore. So
I don't mind shots as long as I can watch it done. When I was getting some pain doctor shots in my lower back for some back pain, I was laying on my stomach with my bare back, being exposed, and I can't see what she's doing, and she just randomly would jab with the needle, not even put her hand there and say poke. She would just go, and I'm like, trying not to jump because she's poking right next to my spine, and that's really hard to do. Screw that. Yeah, so normally needles don't bother me, but I could totally sympathize with Naomi on this one.
Mm-hmm.
I just know I hate when they fish for veins.
Oh, that happens to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a really big change that might not be noticed right off the bat. And that's the motivation for the Rossi going to Illis in the first place, or New Terra, depending on whose side you fall on.
Illis.
In the books, they're heading out there after the shuttle was destroyed. After that was destroyed, to settle the problem between the RCE and the colonists.
Mm-hmm.
On the show, he's going out there to investigate the potential protomolecule problem there. And everything else is like secondary. But that was the primary reason why she hired him to go out there. So it's a different motivation.
You're right.
It's a different motivation I've noticed.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think again with the book. Did they even know about that protomolecule structure stuff ahead of time, or did they discover that once they were there?
I think it was seen before they.
If you send probes to a planet and can determine that the planet is somewhat livable, you'd think the probe would be somewhat close, and you'd pick up on things like that. Especially when in the book, the Edward Israel at one point says there's like half of the continent, because it has the one big continent. Half of the continent is like old industrial stuff from billions of years ago, as opposed to standard land that you would expect.
Right.
So they had to have known ahead of time. So yeah, that's a dichotomy. Yeah, that's definitely a dichotomy.
I'm really liking the Bobby storyline. Bobby's one of my favorite characters on the show anyways. So I'm kind of partial to her books and show, I should say.
Speaking of that, if we're ready to move on from the changes, favorite scenes of dialogue.
Oh,
there's a few.
I have one.
Go for it.
It's a short little scene, but I love it. It's the video call from Peaches to Amos. And there's so much depth in that short little conversation that it's great. It's helping us point to things that are to come, but it's also, it's a change from the book. It's highlighting a whole bunch of stuff that happened in between last season and this season that we don't know about otherwise. It's a nice bridge video, but it highlights their relationship and the meaningfulness.
And it's a thing I can believe would have happened, that we just never saw it in the books, but that it did happen. If either Daniel Abraham or Ty Frank was to say, yeah, that's canon, I wouldn't have a problem with that because,
So that's a joke.
From that scene, I've got one of my notable quotes or notable quotables. It's Amos talking to her, and he says, "Breathe in, breathe out, eat, shit, sleep. Take whatever they give you, give them nothing in return." And we know that in a later season, that's repeated back to him. It was such an influence on her that she actually repeats it back to him in a season or 10.
I can't say I've got a necessarily favorite or least favorite. I've been really struggling to figure out what I'd have to say. I have a montage that I would say is my favorite. And it's that montage there at almost the very end of the episode where that amazing music is playing from, and it covers the the shuttle coming down, the crash, the explosion, finding the bodies and people spread out all the way pretty much to the end of the episode. And it's just so beautiful and so wonderfully done. I think that, that was, to me, that was kind of the highlight of the episode for me.
The whole shuttle breakup was just fantastic. The look on Murdy's face when, he's leaning forward and looking down as he can see into the hold, and the contents of the hold are just clearing out, and that look on his face is just absolutely fantastic. I mean, well, a little later on, I'll get into that a little further, but my God, that was really chilling. That whole sequence, particularly when the person sitting next to LV,
goes right out the window, out the air.
That scene was done very, very well.
When he's just standing there looking out at, I mean, he doesn't need to be standing at all.
It's that whole sequence, because I think there's like about 12 different shots that they have, and sometimes they jump back and forth. Just incredible.
Eisner did a great job with this episode.
Yeah, how that was done is another illustration of a change from the book, because we're only getting that event from the perspective of these guys trying to get down to the planet.
Yeah,
we don't get the other side, the colonists. There's a whole part of the story that's left out of this episode that we had when we read the book. I'm not sure which way I like it better, to be honest. This gives a little more mystery to it. It's definitely more for television this way. But
for me, it's kind of related to that call that's just taking place after the beginning, where one of his dads are talking to Naomi and trying to do Belter, and he is so embarrassed over it. And I just found that hilarious.
I think my favorite moment. I actually think my favorite moment of the episode is the investigator Miller talking about the rain and wondering what it tastes like.
That scene right there.
Yeah, that shot you shared reminded me of that scene, because I was trying to remember what it was. I mean, it's a nice callback to what was the end of season 1 or something. Was it halfway through season 2 when Miller's like, "I've always wondered what the rain tastes like"? He asked Holden that. Do you remember that? Yeah, I like that.
There's another thing on that scene that Jim mentioned. The Amos scene, I think it was. Amos had said, "I had a lot of past in my past," and I'm pretty sure that was a direct quote from the book. I just can't remember when he said it in the book.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It was,
of course, it's a reference to another one of the short stories.
It was in that conversation about names, wasn't it?
Like, I was trying to figure out when he said this in the book, and I just could not find that reference. Like I remember him saying exactly that in the book. I could not find what chapter it was.
If I was reading ebook, I'd search it for you, but I'm listening to an audiobook, so I can't.
It was the same. So I remember hearing this. I couldn't remember if it was in the latter half or beginning half, but I remember him saying, "I have a lot of past in my past." And it's I know it wasn't in his conversation to Peaches. So
a couple of other things I really like.
Not Peaches, but or whatever. Okay. But
I was going to say my favorite. My favorite in the entire thing was actually at the end when they get off the ship and Naomi is experiencing being out in the open for the first time. And I thought the way that was presented was just so good. I mean, she's walking out, looking down. She looks up, stumbles. I mean, she's used to looking up and seeing forever. She looks up here and there's sky, something she's never experienced before. And the way that Jim kind of holds Alex back for a moment, let her take care of herself. And then immediately after that, the haunting music and the overhead shot of them walking through this really bizarre
terrain.
landscape
that was
is just weird. I loved it.
And then, like 2 minutes later, they get attacked by those bugs.
Yeah.
Right. That aren't mentioned so much later in the book.
Pretty much sums up, a vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tropical place, swarmed by bugs. Fantastic.
One of the things I really liked about this episode, especially the Bobby stuff, is they did a really beautiful job of punching home how lonely she is. Even when she's at her brother's house, she's alone. Because she walks in, her sister-in-law walks right out, her brother-in-law goes, go lay down, her nephew comes in and immediately leaves with some cute girl, and it's just like, wait, what? And she's there alone, and then everywhere she goes, she's feeling alone, she's looking on, and it's just, for somebody who spent her entire career since she's probably 17 or 18, being part of a unit, being part of a military unit, that has got to be absolutely devastating.
Good point.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's good. Yeah.
And there was a really cool line of dialogue heard in the background. On the tannoy, you can hear one of the announcers say, we're open 24 hours and 2/3. And people might wonder, what do they mean 24 hours and 2/3? Well, the Martian day is 24 hours and 37 minutes. Mm-hmm. Just about 2/3 of an hour. So that's their version of saying 24 hours a day plus the 2/3.
Now that's odd because, our scientists sending probes to Mars, we refer to a Mars day as a sol. We don't call it a 24 hours and 2/3. We call it a sol. I find that's very interesting that you pointed that out.
Yeah, huh. I just thought it was kind of neat.
I also have another notable quotable from that particular scene that you were just talking about. It's Bobby to her nephew. She says, "Yeah, I can really heat them up." When he tells her how good it tastes.
Yeah.
Marine humor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's some good humor in the show.
Yeah.
One change that I noticed is, now that I found it in my notes, I had forgotten to bring it up. They reduced the travel time. They've always been vague about travel times, but in this episode, they actually refer to the amount of time they've got from the gate, entering the gate space at Sol, to the time they arrive at Illis is going to be a couple of weeks. Whereas it was months and months and months from the gate to the planet on both sides of ring space.
I think in the books it's 18 weeks to get from the ring
18
to
months.
Illis.
18 months from Earth to Illis. 18 months.
Months, okay.
Yes. So I believe it's a 9-month trip from Earth to the ring gate in the Sol system. A matter of hours to cross the ring gates, the ring space, and then another 9 months to go from that gate to the planet Illis.
Well, and in the show, when you first see Holden and his mom around the campfire, it immediately follows the Belters going through the gate, and it says underneath 8 weeks later. So somehow Avasarala calls him 8 weeks later after the Belters have gone through the gate. So you're correct. The timeline has been compressed dramatically.
Yes. Which I have no serious issue with that. But I'm also the one who says I think they could have been telling us how long everything takes from the get-go with a simple chiron. They just did it here 7 weeks later. Why couldn't they? Opening episode, date, July 29th, 2150 or whatever. Whatever year, right. Whatever date. And then when they go months, and then when it's a jump of months, several months later, 3 months later, 4 months later, there's no reason they couldn't have been doing that from the get-go. I think more shows should do that.
I'm also curious. Like Naomi's having to build up the muscle mass type thing. Did that in 2
9
weeks,
months
I
would be a lot
guess.
better. Yeah, 9 months would be a lot
Those
better.
are some wonderful drugs, I guess. Like, where are these weightlifters at?
Now, I'm curious. Do you feel, or is it true that everything in the show is linear as far as time goes? There's not really a whole lot of jumping back and forth in time. It's fairly linear,
It's
isn't it?
linear.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say it's
TV
linear.
likes it.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah, I'd say it's linear. I wouldn't really say there's much time jumps. I can't think of any specific time, flashbacks on this show or anything like that where something's seen out of sequential order. Not saying it hasn't happened. I just can't think of one where it has.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, they could have had Holden already leaving towards that planet before that accident happened.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting there for who knows how many weeks.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Holden
after he talked to Flora.
Yeah, Holden had said to Miller as well around the campfire that he'd been trying to get back to the rings.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know why. What's the motivation for him wanting to go to the rings? I would think that's the last place he'd want to go.
Because, wait, you talking about Miller?
Well, when he was talking to Miller, he basically, and Miller said, "Hey, let's move on with the case." And Holden has said, "I've been trying to get to Avasarala."
He wants to get Miller out of his head, and the only way to get Miller out of his head is to solve that case. Next clue in the case. You know? I love the way they handled Miller on this episode. That reminds me, Jim, I had a trivia question that I had intended to ask you guys on your show.
Okay.
And I'll see if you can answer it. It has to do with the expanse. It reaches out, it reaches out, it reaches out, it reaches out. How many times a second does it reach out?
Oh, criminy.
134,000 times a
trivia,
second.
man.
So easy.
113 times a second it reaches out.
That was close.
Okay.
It's repeated a number of times. That's why I thought you might have remembered it. But yeah, I'm like, I had it.
Just so
I
that you
gonna
know,
ask it and forgot
113 hertz is between A and A sharp.
Oh, interesting.
Almost halfway between the two.
All right, cool.
So I geeked out
Didn't
on
know
that.
All right, where are we at next?
Let's see. It would be the quality of production, cinematography, special effects, music, etc.
I just got to give props to Clinton Shorter. That last 10 minutes of the episode, he did most of the heavy lifting with that score he composed. It looks like he's been composing the entire run of the show. 60 some odd episodes, it said on IMDb, so I'm assuming he had most of the episodes. But yeah, that music was just absolutely beautiful this episode. I couldn't help but notice it during that montage sequence.
Yeah, I was nosing around some of the other shows and such because I had made a note here about the chase, the music behind the chase at the very beginning when the Belters are going through the ring and such. He uses pretty much the same music for these types of chases. He's fairly consistent in doing that, which makes sense. I mean, you keep that same theme going. It doesn't make sense to create something new every time, obviously.
Yeah. Keeping things thematically true to each other is important.
I thought
Either you gents have one?
Well, we saw, again, the incredible quality of the special effects and the cinematography in everything related to Illis. We talked about it already, the over-the-top, look-down shots, just every aspect of it. The horde of little spinning things of death that came straight out of the movie Crawl, except they're miniaturized. These sorts of things are done so well, and we know the budget for this was a TV budget, not a movie budget, and yet they're pulling off some amazing quality and bringing all this sci-fi stuff very much to life.
Yeah. When I first saw the swarm that you were just talking about, it reminded me of these videos that you see of giant flocks of birds that will all move in unison, and it just creating beautiful patterns. That was the first thing that popped into my head when I saw that.
What I first saw was the scene from Brendan Fraser's The Mummy when the locusts are coming in. That's the same image right there. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, the CG was just like on the planet was just phenomenal when they did all that. Like the practical effects on the drop ship were great.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, point to anything that looked
And
fake.
I don't think the Rossi has ever looked more beautiful than in this sequence here. As maneuvering over Earth.
Yeah.
I do have one fake.
All right, gotta hear it.
I did not like the looks of the small builder fleet as it was approaching the rings to try and escape and such. I thought that was a little below their standards.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was a new CG group because, they moved to Amazon or what it might have been. It just didn't look good. It almost looked like middle models on strings.
I think there's always issues when you have that much space to deal with and trying to get things to look good from that far away.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when they're small, trying to get them to have high resolution, but also look good and not look like, like you said, small models.
Scale's probably one of the biggest problems this show has when it comes to animation, the graphics and visual stuff.
That's exactly it.
Sometimes the
what
scale
happens
just isn't quite as big as things should be.
Well, as I said, if you zoom in too close, things look too big, and all of a sudden it takes you out of the showing the scale, like how small these ships are and how far apart they are.
Even the biggest ships, the Behemoth, it's the biggest ship there is in this system, or it was in the system. But even that should have been dwarfed by the ring gate itself, because the ring gate's 1,000 kilometers across.
Yeah,
I mean, if you think about how big this ring is, those small ships should be thousands of kilometers apart.
Yeah,
trying to get to the ring,
almost invisible, and be almost invisible.
Well, not even just that, like just to get the other ships to not target each of them, they should be as far away as possible from each other, just to prevent them from all targeting them all at once as one group. So you can't shotgun them, Yeah.
And even the Navy only has ships going close to each other when you're passing supplies back and forth. Otherwise, there's always going to be some fair distance between ships. So
I know in the David Weber's Honor Harrington sighting, the average space between ships in a fleet is measured in the tens or if not hundreds of thousands of kilometers. From your nearest neighbor, the Allied ship, because space is so big and speeds at which you're moving in space is so fast that if you can actually see the other ship with your eyes standing on the hull of your ship, you're too close. The amount of time it takes to react is more than it takes to go from where you're at to where their ship is. If you're that close, if you can see somebody with your own eyes, they're way too close because you don't have time to react.
And that's precisely like the artistic problem. Like, how do you show the scale without making them look like models?
Yeah, and space-based science fiction has been running into that issue for decades.
Yeah. No way around it.
No.
One other thing on the special stuff, going back to the music, their use of silence. When you're in space, the use of silence is
usually.
I did catch a moment in this episode where you heard on the outside the slowing down sounds of a ship, and I went, Wait a second.
Yeah.
No.
You're always
no.
almost every episode of this show has sound in space. They do it all the time, even during battle, especially during battles. You hear all the PDCs firing, even when the camera is a shot outside the ship.
Because we want it. That the casual fan wants it.
Our brains are accustomed to seeing things with sound attached to them. At least those with full hearing. With hearing, we're used to it. Our brain has a hard time when there's no sound coming from it.
Well, if there ever is space combat, they're definitely going to make it so your helmets will relay sound to you. It identifies the bullets coming at you. It's going to go bing, 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 bing.
Yep. In stereo, you can hear it as it goes by.
Yeah. It's going to give you that sound effect, even though there's no sound.
Right.
I almost guarantee you that's going to happen.
In movie space, everyone can hear you scream. All right, where are we at next, Max?
Best or worst actor?
Oh.
Who wants to go?
Is anybody going to disagree with Bern Gorman as Murtry?
I won't disagree, but I have a different name.
I never like him. We're not supposed to like him, but
no.
He's so good at being bad that I struggle with just not liking the acting because it's almost caricature. He's bad, Where's the nuance? Yeah. So he doesn't make my best, that's for sure.
Okay.
The name I was going to give is Dominique Tipper. Just watching, her performance as Naomi is leaving the ship, and walking on a surface of a planet, because she's going through the catwalk, the dock, whatever that's called. That was just the gangplank, I guess. That was just emotional as all get out, and I thought she did a really beautiful job of it.
I have to agree with you there. And I brought it up. I thought she was just so wonderful coming out, and the looks that she had on her face, the wonder that she was able to portray, I thought was beautiful, without a doubt. And then, you showed the picture earlier, the agony that she went through on the ship, getting her shots. Boy, was that something. And a little cheesecake with that strap going across her privates,
I'm still on the West Chatham train. I always am. His delivery of Amos is such a unique kind of character. He didn't have a big part in this particular episode, but that scene with Peaches early on, the way he delivers those lines and his reactions to what she says is just perfect. But we also get that little touch of Amos oddity humor when Holden gets back and he's like, "So you saw Avasarala? What was she wearing?"
Right? How'd she look?
Yeah, how did she look?
He's so good.
Amos Burnt is definitely on my list of the most interesting and complex characters in fiction that I've ever read. He's just utterly fascinating, both the TV show version and the book version.
Well, in the book version, he's sort of an older, chubbier guy too.
Yeah, a much larger, older guy.
Yeah, kind of a strange change from what we see. In fact, the character Alex is the same thing. He's supposed to have a bit of a paunch,
yeah, and he's balding. I never noticed until my recent reread that Alex is balding, and I'm like, whoa.
Well, I think
I should have known that. Alex is my favorite character.
I think it was also 2 years was the gap between 3 and 4.
Yeah,
something like that.
No, 4 years. I think it said 4 years. I could be wrong.
I mean, a lot can happen in that time.
That's true.
Especially when you got to deal with Holden. But I have to agree with Amos being, for best actor. Just he has so few words he says, but what they say.
2 years. You're right. 2 years. My mistake.
Yeah, what he
Sorry.
says, it's powerful.
Yep. And on the bad actor side, like that lady Avasarala was talking to on that meeting, I just felt her acting was like wooden or stiff.
Nancy Gow, the actress for Nancy Gow.
I think
that
that's
who that
what he
was?
means. Yeah, it's hard to not be outshone by Shorey.
But like, I just felt like her acting was like wooden and stiff. It just didn't seem like it was that high quality acting at the point. But man, I see more of her later in the series. I don't know, but it just didn't seem like she was up there with the rest of these actors.
Okay.
Who is that? I'm sorry, I was reading the chat.
Who's the actress who played Nancy Gow?
Let's see. Nancy Gow was Lily Gow, I guess. That's interesting.
They call her Lily? I thought it was Nancy.
No, I mean the actress is Lily Gow.
Oh.
I mean, it's usually not a good sign.
Yeah, it's the same exact last name. You're correct.
It's usually not a good sign when the actor shares a name with the character.
Mm-hmm.
It happens as a coincidence sometimes.
I mean,
well, I love this coincidence because I brought him up or wrote him down as one of the actors I really liked, not only in this episodes but episodes to come. The guy that played Coop, and his name is Chris Holden Reed.
I know him from Lost Girl. Does anybody remember that TV show Lost Girl? He was one of the leads on that show. Supernatural, modern day supernatural type show.
so if we're done with the actors, it goes to Glenn's favorite question of the night.
Themes?
Yeah.
Themes? I want to hear what the one that somebody else said they had one.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. The theme of the struggle between control and freedom. We've got this whole, and they did that. It's a line straight from the book where they do the direct comparison between the rush to all these planets and the Yukon gold rush. And we have to control it for the safety of the people, even though they don't believe us.
Mm.
Yeah, and that tension, that is a huge theme of this whole book, and this whole season is going to have a big part of that. And we saw it really prominent in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Max, did you have any?
I mentioned in the beginning drama as a theme. And
it's
an ongoing theme throughout. We have minor themes of family. We have it straight off beginning with Holden and his family. We have his family with his crew. We have Drummer and her family. You have what's her face on the Martian side with her family.
What's her face?
Yeah.
What's her face? I'm
Bobby.
brain dead at this point. Bobby.
Yeah. That was great.
Sorry. It's one of those days.
Max, you've had better days, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kids, never once. No.
I only had a few. First and foremost, it's one that is pretty much there in The Expanse and half the other TV shows we've ever discussed. I'm just phrasing it slightly different. Distrust of the other. That could be said is anything from just not trusting, Earthers or Martians, but to flat out racism against Earthers and Martians. The plight of the refugee is kind of a major thing here, at least when it comes to the people on Ilus, because that's how they were. They were refugees for over a year, living stuck aboard ships. They weren't able to land or dock anywhere because nobody wanted to take in a bunch of refugees. The whole fact that New Terra was given to a corporation by a charter shows the corporate influence on government is still front and center 300 years from now in this series. And then there's...
You mean it isn't now?
Well, it's still front and center, and it is now, yeah, but it's still there.
Now it's in your face. Yeah, it's not front and center. It's in your face, brother.
And I guess I could call them mysteries. There's a lot of mysteries going on as to what's going on here. I could call that a theme, I guess. There's the mystery of, on Illis, like, is that protomolecule? Is that a danger? At this point on the show, we don't know who blew up the landing pad. So that's a mystery. Bobby is being shanghaied into investigating a mystery starting really soon here. And we're getting hints of that right now. So that's what I caught.
And it's interesting. There's a mystery in the show that we do not have in the books because Miller has already told Holden, you have a bit of protomolecule on the ship.
Yeah.
He tells
him in this book.
Yeah.
He tells him in this book. But yeah, he'll find that out.
Yeah, well, I think it happened before they arrived. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure they'll still have him find it in the season.
Yeah.
But it was a mystery for a while.
Yeah, so that is taking your mystery thing, that becomes a non-mystery, as a
right. I'm going to be muting myself. Go ahead, carry on without me.
All right.
Okay, so let's begin the Glen roast for 5 minutes.
All right. I actually have a one more quote, and you may need to go back and rewatch this because when you have that conversation between Naomi and Drummer, and Drummer says, "Oh, I heard you're going to Illis," and Naomi says, "Yeah, we're going to help them, not kick them off." And Drummer says, "Foolish to think they would live there," referring to the Belters. "Listen to the way she says it and try not to think that she's a Klingon." I guarantee you go back and listen to that line and you're going to say, my God, yes. That not only, what she says, but the tone in which she says it. It is Klingon speaking English.
Let me check my notes here.
That's the last of my notable quotables. So we covered everything else.
Let's see.
I was just looking. What Star Trek show came out in around 2019?
That would have been strange. No, Discovery. Yeah, it would have been Discovery. Strange New Worlds came after that.
Yeah.
Discovery or Lower Decks? I don't remember what year Lower Decks started, but that's
Lower Decks came out
after
Discovery, I'm pretty sure.
2020.
Yeah, I think so.
Now,
Lower Decks.
You can only watch those on Paramount, correct?
Yes.
I think so.
For now?
Yeah.
Lower Decks, if you are a Star Trek fan and you like to laugh, Lower Decks is the best. It's the more Star Trek lore you know, the funnier it will be. But if you don't know any, it doesn't mean it's not going to be funny. It will be funny.
I've streamed Paramount since it was CBS All Access because of Star Trek. That's exactly why I got it way back then.
Okay. Now, it is the Below Decks. Is that the one that's animated?
Yeah.
Lower Decks is
okay.
Yeah, it's Lower Decks is the animated one. Done by the guy who did Rick and Morty.
All right.
So if you're a Rick and Morty fan, you'll probably be a fan of this show.
Never seen it.
They had a crossover with Strange New Worlds.
Yes, live action crossover.
Yep. And they had a other show that got canceled. I can't think of what it's called. The other 3D animated one.
Oh no! Star Trek Prodigy got canceled after season 1, but Netflix picked it up and did a second season. There might be a third season. Netflix has the rights for it now.
It was like the biggest travesty Paramount did, because they had like the worst release schedule for that show. They released 2 or 3 episodes, and then like 3 months before the next episodes came out.
They really, it was 10 episodes and then a couple of months later than 10 episodes.
And they
It
weren't
was a
releasing
really
weekly.
bad release.
They were not
No.
releasing weekly. It was horrible schedule.
That
Yeah,
makes no
it
sense.
really killed that show a lot, and it was actually a really good show.
Mhm.
I think I've watched both seasons. I really loved it.
But
Yeah,
that,
and- yeah.
it makes no sense to release, one season 2 years after another.
which is commonplace now.
Yeah.
It's absurd. But yeah, I understand the realities.
So yes, the guy wearing an R2D2 shirt loves Star Trek. So make of that what you will. I've watched every episode of every Star Trek show except for the original series and the animated series.
Live long and may the force be with you.
Exactly.
Exactly. Don't forget to be awesome. We have anything else we want to cover, Max?
I think that's it.
Well, Jim, thank you for being the opener this week.
Of course.
This season. I just didn't feel right about talking about The Expanse without you on at least one episode of it.
I
So,
appreciate it.
glad to have you on. Is there anything going on your channel that you'd like to tell us about?
There's always something going on our channel. Just, plugging away, putting out content, lots of book reviews these days. Zach and I just dropped a big live stream today, full episode on Wind and Truth, Brandon Sanderson's most recent Stormlight Archive book. About 90 minutes of us going off on our full spoil, complete
I'll
opinion.
have to watch that down the road.
Well, let me ask, what's your general opinion on it?
It's not the best of the Stormlight Archive books.
Okay.
It falls in the middle. For my son, it was his favorite. And I think the generational difference makes a difference. I think he saw things in the book he appreciated more than I did being an older guy, and just not on board with some of the decisions. Neither one of us think the book is flawless. It's got issues, but we're both primarily here for the story. We'll forgive a lot of technical mistakes and various issues with a story if the story is good. And the story was
your
not
favorite
as
of the
good
books?
as I wanted it to be.
What's your favorite Stormlight so far?
Depends on the day. Usually I'll say Rhythm of War, book 4, but sometimes it's Oathbringer, book 3. They're very neck and neck for me.
So far, that's what I would go. I haven't even cracked book 5 yet. So
book 5
I'll get
does a
to there
beautiful
eventually.
job of answering a lot of questions. You finally go, with a lot of things, and that's probably the best part of the book. But
I was waiting for the butt.
It's got some pacing issues. It adds some elements. I'm like, I didn't need that.
Now, I'm curious, the generational thing. Is it something that you recognize, or is it something you think just occurs?
It's part of our show. We approach fiction differently because of our 30-year age difference, and we've seen it again and again. So some of the things that he values about Wind and Truth, I'm like, nah, that doesn't work so much for me. And I think that's kind of where it comes from.
Okay.
One of his main characters is an atheist, so I think she's well handled too. Oops.
Yeah. But overall, it's not a bad story.
Like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode tonight, we're having Mitch here with us all season. He's probably going to be the only constant you'll see throughout the season because we've managed to have some other guests lined up, and each of the crew members here at What the Adaptation is going to at least get a couple of weeks off throughout the season just to take the pressure off us of it. So I want to thank everybody in chat for hanging out tonight. Please leave us some comments. Click that like button. And if you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We could use that. That would help a lot. See you next week. And don't forget to be awesome.